There are two major ways that employers in the UK will react to an employment tribunal claim, and one of them really takes people by surprise and can make them feel awful. So let's talk about both of them. So the first major reaction that I see is that employers decide to come back to the negotiating table at the point where a claim has been made. Now, in order to even get to the point where you could have filed a tribunal claim, you had to go through ACAS early conciliation. And the whole point of ACAS early conciliation is to try and reach some kind of a negotiated settlement. Most of the time, an employer might have said, look, we're not going to negotiate a settlement because we don't think they have a claim. We don't think they're going to take it any further. Or you tried to reach a settlement and they gave you like a lowball offer. You weren't happy with it, and so you went ahead with the tribunal claim. But once the claim actually comes through, then the calculus changes for an employer, because now they're looking at the cost of the legal representation to actually respond to the claim, show up at a preliminary hearing, get the legal advice, all that kinds of stuff. And they're looking at any potential reputational damage that they could have because these tribunal claims are public. And so many employers do reconsider a settlement negotiation. And the way that they're going to think about how much to settle for, or if they want to settle at all, is that they're going to be looking at the tribunal claim form itself and trying to assess how strong your case might be. And so, for example, if an employer is looking at a tribunal claim document that is basically just like a blow-by-blow of everything that happened, it doesn't have the specific legal labels for what happened in there, it doesn't use the kind of format that the tribunal is expecting, even if you theoretically have a strong case, they might look at that and say, you know what, we're going to roll the dice and take it a little bit forward because I don't think this is going to do very well in tribunal. If, on the other hand, you have gone through, looked at the specific names of the specific legal claims, you've backed each one up with the events that happened, you've thought about the legal tests that were involved, all of those things is what our platform tries to help you to do and what a lot of my content tries to help you to do, then hopefully an employer would look at that and think, this looks like this might actually have some legs. I might have to spend some time fighting this in the tribunal. Maybe it's worth me trying to negotiate a settlement now. And I think all of that is the outcome that most people hope and expect their employer to react with when they get a tribunal claim. Some people just want to go to tribunal because they want their day in court and they want that accountability to be created. But for the people who are looking for a settlement, they're hoping that a tribunal claim will create the impetus for that settlement. And often it does. But the other thing that we see a lot of employers doing is deciding, well, I mean, if you think about it, there's really three options an employer could take here. They could fight it in court, they could settle, or they could bully you into dropping the claim. And bullying you into dropping the claim happens way more regularly than you might want. So what do I mean by bullying you to drop the claim? Well, there are two main tactics that an employer uses. And the really frustrating thing is that on the face of it, these tactics are perfectly legitimate, because sometimes an employee really doesn't have a legal basis for a claim. Sometimes, a terrible fight has happened, a personality conflict has happened. Sometimes something can be wrong, but not be illegal. And in those cases, it's perfectly legitimate for an employer to say, look, you don't want to take this to tribunal because it could have bad consequences for you. But let's be real here. Most of the time, that's not what's happening. And so what these employers do is they use the instruments designed for those edge cases where it is just a outlandish, spurious, vexatious claim, and they apply them to every single claim. Every single one. I am not joking. I have heard lawyers specifically say that they auto-generate some of these documents when they are supporting an employer. So what documents am I talking about? Two in particular. One is an application to strike out. Now, in the tribunal, there is a set of rules, right? It's called the Employment Tribunal Rules of Procedure 2013. And that's like the rule book that both sides have to follow in an employment tribunal. And one of those rules is that if one side is acting vexatiously, or if they're raising a case or a defense that has no basis in reality, then the other side can just put their hand up, say to the tribunal, hey, this is ridiculous. Can you just strike out this whole thing and find in my favor instead? Because this is, on the face of it, absolutely ridiculous, and it has no reasonable prospect of success. That's the magic phrase. These employers know that we don't know the rule book. We're not doing this all the time. And so they apply for a strikeout and basically just say, well, their claim is terrible, so please will you just throw this out? And so what you see from the other side is you put in your claim, you get an email from the tribunal that says, hey, we've got your claim, we're sending it off to the employer. The employer sends back this document called a grounds of resistance that basically says everything that you've said is a lie. And then they attach to that a strikeout application that says, hey, judge, can you just throw this whole thing out because this is baseless nonsense? And that really freaks people out. Of course it does. You don't know the rules of this thing, and they've just put in, their lawyers have just put in this scary document that says that your whole case is going to get thrown out before you even have a chance to start. And so that really freaks people out. But that's not even the worst thing. Here's the pièce de résistance. The second document that some law firms will auto-generate, even though it is designed for very specific edge cases, is a costs warning letter. And I have not seen anything that can upset someone as much as a cost warning letter in this entire process. This is the most destructive thing that an employer can do. And again, it's designed for a very specific, narrow set of circumstances, but they will use it every single time. That letter basically says, hey, we think that your case is terrible. We think that you're wasting everyone's time, my time, the court's time, and so we are going to ask the tribunal to make you pay all of our costs, every single legal cost that we have. And guess what? That's going to be expensive. That's going to be tens of thousands of pounds. And so they're basically saying, I hope you know what you're doing, because if you don't, you're going to be on the hook for tens of thousands of pounds. Are you sure you want to go ahead with this? You can just withdraw right now and we won't do that. But if you go ahead, the fear of having to spend tens of thousands of pounds is going to be over your head all the time, because we will come after you because you've wasted our time. I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't drop their case after that if they don't have any other support? That is terrifying. But what they're not telling you when they send you that often auto-generated letter is that costs are only awarded in employment tribunal if the other side knows that they have a baseless case, pursues it anyway, or is just taking the piss with the whole court, they're acting like a complete jerk all the time. They're not showing up to things. They're not answering replies. They're not following any deadlines. If you're just doing your best and you think that you have a case, that does not apply to you. They also don't tell you that the latest statistics that we have is that when an employer does apply for costs, the tribunal has only awarded it to them in 6% of cases. 0.6%. No, they just send this letter on official paper that looks really scary and says, you better know what you're doing or else you're going to be on the hook for tens of thousands of pounds. And that makes a lot of people drop their claim. And then the problem goes away for the employer. They didn't have to settle. They didn't have to pay the lawyers to go to tribunal. They just had to pay them to auto-generate a scary letter. Yes, in a perfect world, the employer would really have two options. I'm going to fight this because I think it's wrong, or I'm going to settle because I don't think it's worth my time, or maybe I did actually do something wrong. And maybe in a few edge cases, the employer would be able to send a letter that says, I don't think you want to carry on with this because I don't think this actually has a legal basis for it. But in reality, the most common reactions that we see, and we see hundreds of these, is they either settle or they try to get you to drop it. And I'll let you decide which one we see more of. So be armed, be ready. We're here to support you. Lots of other people are here to support you. But just know that that's what's going to happen, or the most likely things that will happen when you make a tribunal claim, and then be ready for it.